Good evening, everyone. George first, Nate. How's everyone doing? Just got in a quick workout and glad to be doing these Wednesday evening tech sales lives. What's good? Doing good. Deep in account planning for 2022. Things are starting to pick up. I'm in Chicago right now. Your company is wrong on RepView. So yes, so RepView segments it by customer segment, but there can be multiple levels within segments too. So these are kind of like average numbers. Can you start a tech sales career at a big tech company like Amazon? Yeah, Amazon actually has openings right now for demand generation reps and associate account representatives. Those are entry-level roles. They'll hire people straight out of college. They also do sales internships too. I think they just opened up their listings for sales internships again right now. So thoughts on Datadog? Datadog's solid, hot startup right now. So I've heard good things about working there. Opinion on AE versus account management versus customer success. What's the coolest? So I'm a little biased. I'm going to say account executives just because they're going to be pulling in the biggest commission checks. But account management and customer success is cool too. You know, it depends on the company and the roles. Like for example, if you have like an L6 customer success role at like Google, for example, you know, you're still making a ton of money, relatively, you know, low stress compared to AE. So what industries fall under the tech sales industry umbrella? So basically anything. So tech sales, I categorize it as like software sales that's B2B, so business to business. So a lot of sales that people think of is B2C, business to consumer. So that'll be like car sales or insurance sales, and they're like short sales cycles, high pressure, high volume. Software sales or tech sales, you're selling to other businesses. Deals can take, you know, 1 month to a year or longer. Deals can be in the millions of dollars of you know, per contract per year, and yeah. So, and you also typically get like a very good base salary within tech sales. So, like for example, this is like top paying enterprise roles, enterprise companies. This is off of RepView. They're sponsoring this live too. At the enterprise level, this is where you would be, you know, at let's say 5 years of experience if you're doing well. You know, pretty typical to get a $150K base salary, which is awesome for a sales role. So it's not commission only. View on Okta. I've heard good things with Okta too. They're rated pretty high on RepView. You told your buddy that tech sales is the way to go, but he's scared. Hype him up. I mean, show him my TikToks. I guess I think it's you can make. I know people in like their young 20s. So I'm 31, a little older, but I know people making that have had, you know, $1 million years at the age of like 25 because they got into sales at a startup right out of college, moved up to the enterprise level, and they were at like a startup that had a great IPO. So would 3-year employment gap matter? Not too much. Just make sure you have a good explanation for that. I mean, if you have visa issues, that's pretty typical explanation. SDR to customer success. Yeah, not every SDR wants to go into a closing role, into an account executive role. When I started off as an SDR, some of the SDRs went into like sales engineer roles, other ones went into product, other ones went into engineering. Best tools to learn as an SDR if you want to become an AE. I would say LinkedIn. Definitely make sure you know how to use LinkedIn, Sales Navigator very well, very powerful. Is there a place you can learn more tech for sales and not sales info? Yeah, there's a ton. It depends on the industry that you're in. Like for example, if you're in cloud, you know, Cloud Guru is great. If you're in cybersecurity, Cyber IT. So it really kind of depends. Opinions on becoming SDR team lead. Great question. So a lot of people wonder, like, you're an SDR and you're offered an SDR manager position. Should you take that? So SDR team lead, I think, is fine because you're not necessarily, usually you don't have like direct reports. You're just kind of like a lead SDR that coaches and mentors other people. Once you go into the path of management for inside sales or SDRs, that's when things can get a little dicey because it's easy to get kind of pigeonholed into inside sales management, meaning it can be fairly difficult to go from an inside sales or SDR manager to an enterprise field sales manager, because to be an effective enterprise field sales manager, you need experience as an individual seller in enterprise sales, and you don't have that if you go straight to management too early. Miami or Austin for tech sales? I would say Austin for sure. Are there internships in tech sales? Yep. AWS actually has a few internships posted right now. VMware, solid place to do sales. Is recruitment relative to tech sales? Kind of. I mean, you're selling when you're in recruiting, you're selling positions to candidates. You're still prospecting. You're managing a pipeline, closing, and so on. So those are the commonalities between those roles. You're late, but currently a financial analyst at a beauty company anyway. Can you pivot to tech sales? Yes, you definitely can. So look at my playlist on my profile, how to get into tech sales. I have some free resources, great videos posted on there in terms of like what to look for the positions, how to tailor your resume. You can look at my Discord community. That's in my bio too. Have some free resources there. I'm trying to get more active on there. Have a few moderators that are going to be starting there soon. And so I recommend going down that route. Give it a good effort. Apply to 40 positions or so. And if after like 4 weeks you're not really getting any traction, that's when you could look at a program like Pre-Hired or Pre-Sales Academy. Both of them are listed in my bio. They take about 8 to 12 weeks. They don't charge anything up front. They teach you literally everything you need to know, do all the coaching, mentoring, interview prep, and will get you in an entry-level role at the end of those 8 to 12 weeks. And then they have a repayment plan based on you actually getting a role within tech, which is kind of cool. So it removes any of the risk on your end in terms of what happens with some of like the coding boot camps, for example. People will pay 15, 20 grand for these coding boot camps, and then they can't land a software engineering role. So those two programs that I have linked, they do income share agreements, which is kind of like hiring a lawyer on contingency. They only get paid if you land a role, which is, I think, a good incentive. Thoughts on Gitlab? Gitlab's solid. Do I know anything about a company called Bandwidth? No, I haven't heard of that one. What educational background is ideal? So the ideal, honestly, for like anyone who's like still trying to pick like a college degree, I always tell people do computer science. Even if you don't want to be a developer, it's just like a great degree to have. Gives you a lot of credibility. You don't have to be a developer. But yeah, BS in business is going to be a good degree background for tech sales. Honestly, you don't really need like a specific degree or anything for tech sales. You pretty much learn everything on the job. You start off as a sales development representative. That's like the entry-level role. It's kind of like an apprenticeship, like when you're trying to become like a plumber or electrician. You're in this role for like 12 to 18 months. It's not meant to be like a permanent role. You're meant to learn the key skills, learn prospecting, learn the sales process, and then get promoted to an inside sales rep or account executive. What should your resume look like when you're applying for SDR? So your resume should, when you think about like sales is about process, it's about consistency, it's about numbers and performance. So anything that you can use to quantify the performance in your prior roles or internships, that's going to help a lot when you're applying for SDR positions. Is not wanting management okay? You love selling, pressure to be advancing. Yeah, you definitely don't need to go into management. For example, I used to sell at Google, and they recognize that not everyone wants to become a manager, for example, because you're moving away from selling. So they actually created director level positions for individual contributors. And at most of like the big companies, you can move up very, very high as an individual contributor without having to go into management, which is fine. Some people really like selling or they're really good at it. And the top salespeople will actually always out-earn their manager because managers have a quota that's shared across a team of 6, 8, 10, 12 individuals. So obviously it's a lot harder to exceed quota because you're going to need basically everyone to exceed quota for that. Highest paying tech verticals that aren't cloud or cyber. Fintech's really, really hot right now. That's a good one to be in. But cloud and cyber, two top ones in my opinion. Thoughts on selling SaaS products to public sector. So I've never actually sold in the public sector. At the companies that I've been at, there's been separate sales teams that cover public sector. The sales process is definitely a bit different, usually slower. You're doing a lot more RFPs. But it's a great area to specialize in for sure. Usually what'll happen is you'll kind of fall under commercial or public sector, and then you'll kind of like stick within that path. What does inside sales do? Not many people talk about this role. So inside sales is essentially the same thing as an account executive. They're closing opportunities, but usually they're paired up with a field sales representative or a senior seller usually covering the same territory, but they'll be covering the smaller opportunities, smaller deals, the more transactional deals, occasional bigger deals, and it's meant to be more of a junior role compared to field sales. When everyone was traveling before, there would be almost no travel in inside sales. That was the key differentiator, but right now, even field sales reps aren't traveling too much. It's starting to pick up a bit more, but that's kind of the difference there. Can women thrive in sales? Yeah, absolutely. Actually, for example, when I was at Google, they did a lot of reports on diversity, both by ethnicity and by sex. And they actually, when you compare like the engineering org versus non-engineering org, there's actually a lot more women within that role. And then I think all the women that I know in sales, in tech sales, they've done extremely well. They tend to be very detail-oriented, very passionate about the role. So they have a lot of empathy for problems that customers face. So I've had female managers, directors. They've all been great. So I think there's a lot of respect for women within sales and tech sales. You start at AWS next week. Congrats! Glad for you to be joining the team. You've been in car sales for the past 2 years, you don't have a degree, you're 23. Could you do it? Yeah, the last video that I posted, there were a ton of people that mentioned that they've been in software sales, tech sales, and they don't have a degree or anything, so you definitely can do it. You just got into SaaS sales this year. You wish you could have done it 5 years ago. Yeah, definitely. Anytime, obviously it's like planting a tree. The best time to plant a tree, is like, 20 years ago. Second best time is today, so never too late to hop in. Glad that you made the jump. View on Zoom. Zoom is, they've been interesting. They had a ton of growth during the pandemic. Their stock's been a little rocky right now, but a solid platform. I think remote work isn't going anywhere. Telecommunication is extremely important, and Zoom is definitely like a leader in that space. Zero to pseudo. Love the transparency. Thanks, man. Happy to share it. Thanks for hopping on. Can someone go from Big Four auditor straight to AE? Probably not, unless you have very specific industry experience that you can transfer over. Like, for example, you might be able to get an AE role if you target companies that sell software to other auditors. Or, for example, think about the software stack that you used as an auditor and target those companies. And because they'll place a good amount of value in terms of like your industry specific knowledge, especially because you're going to be selling it to people that were in the job that you were at before. So that's going to be your best bet if you want to go straight to AE. And that's why I tell everyone who is a little bit more senior in their career and they're looking to switch into sales, the best way to avoid having to start from the bottom is to make sure that you're not doing a complete 180 degree pivot. Try to leverage some of your prior experiences. So that way it's more of like a lateral move instead of a downward move. But if it's a downward move, in the long run, it really doesn't make too big of a difference. If you do extremely well as a BDR, you can get promoted within 12 to 18 months. And you might actually even be better off in that case because you'll learn the fundamental sales skills, and it's almost like a ramp up role where it's less pressure. You're learning a ton, you're networking, versus if you go in as an AE and you're in like this high visibility, high pressure role, and if you're not given the tools you need to succeed, like I've seen this at some startups, well, they'll hire reps and they just don't have the resources to really train people, so they expect you to come into the role knowing what to do from day one. That's when you could potentially run into a dicey situation where if you're at a high growth startup, they might let you go after like 6 months of non-performance, so something to take into consideration. Is Corporate Bro an accurate depiction of what tech sales is like? It depends. There's different types of sales cultures, but a lot of it is fairly accurate. Another accurate movie or depiction, if you guys have ever seen the movie Office Space, I think that's a good one. Kind of an old movie now, but a lot of the corporate culture stuff still kind of carries over. Is banking experience helpful applying to tech sales role? It depends. There's a lot of companies that sell like into the fintech vertical, so that experience can help. AE versus customer success. So, two very different roles, but you're working under the same team, same umbrella. Pre-sales versus post-sales. So it really kind of depends on what you enjoy doing. Do you like pitching? Do you like doing discovery on new customers? Or do you like ramping and onboarding existing customers and doing more project management? So kind of varies there. You make 300K as a senior director of technology with cloud experience, realistic to jump to 250 plus AE. Yeah, I would say you could probably make that jump. If you're a senior director of technology, you probably might be even a better fit for like a cloud sales engineer or solutions architect, which you could be making 250K plus OTE. Fairly common background for people to have like a developer or director of technology background. They go into like a solutions architect or sales engineer role. So difference between that role versus an AE is you're more of like the technical expert, the product expert, not necessarily a developer, but you're the technical counterpart of the sales rep that's running like the RFPs, doing the proof of concepts, answering the technical questions from the engineers, working with the product team to bring back customer requirements. So take a look at that role too. Do you need a master's degree to become an AE at big companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Zoom? No, I would say most people don't have MBAs. I only got my MBA because when I was at Google, they paid for like 2/3 of it. So it only cost me about like $7,000 out of pocket or $6,000 out of pocket. So at that point, I figured why not? But most people don't actually have master's degrees at those big companies. So don't worry about that. How can you start? So look at my playlist, Get Into Tech Sales. It's on my profile. I've got a bunch of videos there going step by step in terms of what you can do to apply for these roles, build a resume, what roles specifically to apply for. If you don't have any luck after like 3 or 4 weeks and you want something that's a lot more like a hand-holding type experience, one-on-one coaching and mentoring, that's when you'd probably be a good fit for like a boot camp or a sales program like Pre-Hired or Pre-Sales Academy. Those two are in my bio. Check those out too. Let's see. Is 180K OTE for a startup, SMB, mid-market AE role, competitive salary? Yeah, I would say that's fairly competitive for SMB for sure. It's kind of the range there. Is 50 calls, 50 emails a lot a day? If it's a total 100 per day, it's kind of on the upper end. Usually, but it's not too unrealistic. If you think about it, not everyone's going to pick up the phone. Probably of those 50 calls, maybe you'll get a handful of people that will pick up, and a lot of the emails are going to be like follow-up emails because you're not going to be reaching out to, each prospect one time. You're usually going to be doing like 8 to 12 touches. So that means 8 to 12 total emails, LinkedIn messages, and phone calls. So a lot of those emails, for example, you'll have like a cadence set up where you'll have, this is the email template that you send on day 1, and then you do a phone call, leave a voicemail. This is the email template you do on day 4, and then you do a LinkedIn message on day 6. So you kind of have that process built out. So 50 calls, 50 emails a day might sound a lot, but when you have like that process built out and they have like tools that help you, keep track of everything, it makes it a lot more manageable. Hey everyone. Dal Tuff says they're hiring for 2 BDRs at their growing cloud medtech company. Reach out to me. Yeah, reach out to him. Yeah, people have posted positions on my Discord too, so check that out as well. Account manager to AE. Yeah, I've seen people make that move too. So account managers typically are post-sales, so they're managing existing accounts, and then account executives are typically managing new accounts or greenfield accounts, and I've seen people make the move from one to another. Can you do it part-time if you're military? Not really. Pretty much all these jobs are going to be full-time. They're not really going to have too many part-time positions. But they will hire people with that are ex-military. For example, Amazon hires a lot of people with a military background, as well as Google too. Questions just refreshed here. Would you recommend starting out at GCP or AWS given the choice out of college? Yeah, if you could get into one of those two, those are definitely top companies to work for. Just starting out, I would say those are like dream companies for a lot of people on the sales side. So if you can start out there, that's probably like the best way to get into like the higher level sales roles at both of those companies. The best way and the easiest way is to get in at the low level, get promoted, work your way up, versus trying to apply at these really senior level like L6, L7 positions. Which of these roles is the truest hunter role? That would be account executive. Do you think age hurts you when you're trying to get into sales, tech sales, meaning 40 plus? No, actually, I think the older sales reps typically tend to do better. The reason being, you have a lot more experience, and then also it might be easier for you to relate with customers because a lot of people that you're selling to, especially if you're selling at the enterprise level, you're selling to director level and then C-suite, and they're all in their 50s and 60s. Do I offer my own classes? No. I thought about it, but it's a big time commitment to build out like a whole program and everything. I might build out like and I've been trying to like add some resources on the Discord for free. I might end up like doing like a pre-recorded thing, but I'll probably like end up making it free or anything. I don't really want to monetize that. SMB CRM 44K base 75K OTE, good or nah? If it's like your first position, 75K is actually pretty solid. Usually when you're just starting off, offers are going to be between 60 and 100K OTE. Highest I've seen someone get offered for like a new SDR position is 105K OTE, and it really depends on the company and the location. But 75K is definitely solid. What are some starter positions name-wise, like AE and SMB? So starter positions would be SDR, Sales Development Representative, or BDR, Business Development Representative. And they might have some other slight variations, but most of the positions you'll see will be filed under those two names. Is SV Academy for 4-week bootcamp job placement? Yeah, SV Academy is another one of the programs that are out there. How much effort goes into closing your deals once you get a warm lead from a BDR? There's a ton of work to do once you get the warm lead. There's still more qualifying they need to do. You need to make sure you're engaging all the proper stakeholders. You need to get the technical win. You need to get the business win. You need to work with legal. You need to work with procurement. You need to work with a partner in a lot of cases to actually implement the solution. So there's a lot of effort that goes into closing the deals other than just getting the lead, unless it's a very transactional sale, low contract value, and if it's just like a simple SaaS application that doesn't require any integrations, then it could potentially be low effort. But in most cases, for like enterprise deals, there's a lot of effort that's still required. It took 50 companies to say you don't have software experience even though you had medical experience. Yeah, I mean, it's so applying for these first roles, you got to treat it as like sales itself, right? And the product is yourself. You're selling yourself. So 50, 70 companies or applications, not too unusual to go through that many until you actually land a position. Try to get referrals. Referrals will go a long way. Then if you're still not getting any traction, you can look at doing like a resume review service. Perhaps maybe that's something that is not showing up well on your resume. That can help. Then if all else fails, then you can do a program like pre-sales academy or pre-hired, and those will for sure get you into position. They have I think it's like 95 or 99% placement rates for both of them. Have you ever heard of Palo Alto Networks? What do you think? Yes, Palo Alto Networks. They've been around for a long time. They typically were in the firewall space. Actually was interviewing with them a couple of years back. They've pivoted into cloud. They're leaning heavily into cloud right now. So definitely a good place to be working at. Do you recommend trying for referrals or applying directly through LinkedIn? Both. Definitely get referrals if you can. Thoughts on Oracle? Oracle, so they're known to pay a little bit lower than market, but they are like a leading tech company, and they have like one of the best like sales processes or sales organizations. They're known to be like kind of like the pioneers of enterprise software sales. So definitely like an excellent place to at least start your career and then grow your career even further. But yeah, definitely a good place, and they hire a ton, especially like in Austin, for example. What company do I work for? I work for Amazon Web Services right now, but I've worked at a couple other startups, then at Google Cloud as well. Inbound versus outbound. Great question. So when you're in this entry-level role, you're going to get leads from, and then there's inbound versus outbound. So inbound would be responding to inquiries of customers reaching out to you, reaching out to the company. They fill out a form online and say like, hey, I want to talk to a sales rep. Outbound would be reaching out to prospects who haven't directly requested information, but maybe they downloaded a white paper from the website, or they went to a webinar, or they've done literally nothing at all, and their company just fits like the target persona. So typically you're going to do a mix of both. Some companies will have separate inbound teams and outbound teams, but in most cases you end up doing both. As a rep, do you like enterprise culture or startup culture more? It depends. So sometimes I like the startup culture a bit more, or I kind of miss that. At big companies, there's a lot of processes that kind of get in the way of the sales itself. You typically end up doing a lot more reporting and dashboarding work and more administrative work that takes away time from selling, but you have a lot more resources that can help you close the deal for sure, and you don't have to deal, and you have a lot more credibility usually behind the name, behind the product. At a startup, usually you've got a lot more flexibility with the pricing, with the product. Oftentimes you have to like implement custom features with the engineering team, so that can be kind of fun. The other upside with startups, of course, is if you're at a hot startup or a fast-growing startup, you can potentially make a lot of money off of the options that they would grant you. Like I had a buddy that I used to work with. He joined Snowflake a year before they went public. They gave him like $100K worth of options, and once they went public, his options were worth, I think, like $4 million or something like that. So those are the types of figures that you're not going to get at like a big tech company, unless you're coming in at like a director VP level. Like Google or Amazon, they're not going to give you like $4 million of stock. How many hours a week do I work? About 40 hours. It ranges. You know, some weeks are slower, so that might be like 20 or 30 weeks. But yeah, 40 is pretty typical, and it's not like a grind. You're not like constantly working those 40 hours. There's downtime during that day. Basically, I'm available to my customers from like 9 to 5, basically when they are. And then after that, there isn't really too much that is super urgent where I have to like work on evenings or weekends or anything like that. I should never work evenings or weekends. How to negotiate your offer? Best way to negotiate is get counter offers. So, you know, if they give you an offer that's say 100K OTE, you can't really say like, hey, I want more money just because my expenses are this. It needs to be related to your market value, and the best way to prove your market value is to get multiple offers. So I always tell people, try to line up your interviews as close as you can to each other, so that way you get multiple offers at the same time. What you can do to do that, a good tip is be in close communication with the recruiters that you're working with. Once you're in the interview stage with one of them, make sure you're honest with the other ones. When they like, one of the first things a recruiter will ask is, are you currently in the interview process with any other companies? And if so, what stage are you in? Because what they want to do is they want to make sure that they line up their process with the other company. Because the last thing they want to do is they don't want to invest time and resources into interviewing you, only to find out that you accept like an offer a week into like the interview process. So if you tell them that you're interviewing with another company or you just received an offer, they'll try to expedite things. So that's definitely the best way to negotiate. Great questions. What is AE? AE is account executive. That's like the closing role within the tech sales organization. Bro, please check your questions. Yeah, sorry man, like TikTok questions are kind of annoying. So like what happens is they'll refresh like every like 20 or 30 seconds. And then sometimes I'll scroll up to see them, but then like the order changes. So if I didn't get your question, what I think works best is just type it again, and I'll get to it. Almost 200K, yeah, getting very close. I was kind of stagnated a bit at 150, and I started picking up. What is OTE? OTE is on-target earnings. That's how much you would earn if you hit 100% of your sales targets. So it's a combination of your base salary plus your commission if you hit 100% of your target. So for example here, the OTE is 326K at Clary, but the base is 154K. So 326K would be how much you would make if you hit 100% of your target. And if you go over your target, you'll make more money. You'll go into like accelerators. So for example, at this company, the top reps earned 691K. That's how much they earned over that whole year. And you can see it's fairly common, you know, to people to get in, you know, almost to $1 million a year, if not more. Like Google Cloud, top reps. This is mid-market actually. Made 755K. Can you work remotely? Yes, you can work remotely for sure. Average OTE for customer success, it's going to vary quite a bit on levels by level. So for example, at Amazon and most other big tech companies, pay is based on level. So if you get to like level 6, like a senior customer success manager, they're pretty much all at like the salary cap at like Amazon, which is like 160K. And then you're at like I think it's a 30% bonus for customer success. So then it's, what is that? That's like, 210K plus stock. So if you include stock in the OTE at like the senior levels, it can get kind of close to AE. What happens sometimes is they'll give more stock to positions that don't have as high of a commission payout. So for example, if you're a sales engineer, which is usually on like a 70-30 split base commission, they'll get more stock than an account executive who is usually on a 50-50 split. How did I like sales at Google compared to AWS? Major differences. So major difference that I've noticed is, so Amazon, very writing centric focus. So they don't like to do presentations. If you have ideas and proposals, it's encouraged. You basically have to write like 1-page or 2-page summary documents. So I kind of like that. It cuts down on the number of like unnecessary meetings. Things move fairly quickly compared to Google. So AWS has like a very much like a startup culture, even though they're like a huge company. And then there's a lot more focus on the sales organization. At least when I was at Google. When I was at Google, this was like 2018 and 19. Still very much a big focus on like product and engineering, and then sales was kind of like an afterthought. Shortly before I left, Thomas Kurian from Oracle joined. He brought in like the enterprise sales experience, because at the time Google did very well with selling to developers and startups, but did not really understand the selling process and the differences, the nuance that's involved with selling to large companies and large enterprises. So that was probably my biggest gripe at the time, was that they didn't have like the processes that they would need to be successful when you're going against other reps at like Microsoft and Amazon. Great questions. Work schedule. My work schedule. So typically I'm usually up at like 7. I'll try to get like a workout in, look at my personal emails, work emails, and then usually don't have meetings before like 9 a.m. And then I'll have a smattering of like internal meetings and external meetings. And there might be like reports that I need to fill out, follow-up emails. Might have some training. There's always going to be training that's going to be involved, just to make sure that you're up to date with the newest products that are coming out and newest services. And then I usually wrap up at like 4 or 5 o'clock. And then that's like kind of like an average day. And then throughout the year, I'll travel to customers for on-site visits. So there'll be like a couple meetings that'll be scheduled with an on-site visit, and then usually like a lunch or dinner. And there's also like conferences that you can take a part of. I was at reInvent. That was that was a big AWS conference in Vegas. I did that in December. And then at those conferences, it's mostly a ton of networking. So you have a bunch of like customer meetings. You're not really going to sessions. And then of course, you're going out with customers, going out to dinner, going out to lunch with them. You network with some GCP people through my channel, trying to make the move from Accenture. Yeah, there's a good amount of people from GCP on the channel. Is it common for startup BDRs to receive stock options or grants? Yes, that is common. Your pipe comes from inbound, but should you leave for more money? But do you have to do more outbound? Great question. So that's always the dilemma, right? Is the grass really greener on the other side? So you really got to do cost-benefit analysis to see is the potential upside of the new position worth the security? Like, how much you're going to be making in your current role, and you have an idea of what you might make in the new role. So take that into account. There's definitely been situations where people are promised really high OTEs, and they find that it's really hard to meet their number, and they don't even make that number, and they wish they stayed. So can you talk about customer success at AWS? Yeah, customer success at AWS, very important role. They manage the existing relationships with the customers. They work hand in hand with the sales reps. So it kind of depends. Like, it's a great role if you want to be in sales. You don't necessarily want to do the prospecting and all that. Did I ever get the chance to golf with customers? Yep, golfing happens. You go to sporting events. I know reps like in the Bay Area, for example, they'll take their customers out to the racetracks and they'll do track days too. Thoughts on Coupa? Not too many thoughts on my end with Coupa. I'll have to look into it. For coming out of college, thoughts on SDR versus Solutions Consulting Program? Both very solid. Kind of depends which path you want to go on. Do you want to go down the account executive path, or do you want to go down like the sales engineer path? Average sales cycle. You're 6 months at Microsoft as an AE in higher ed, trying to go to majors, enterprise. Yeah, I mean, the sales cycle length varies quite a bit. So if you're at Microsoft selling cloud, for example, selling Azure, sales cycle is going to vary quite a bit depending on the size of the customer you're selling to, if they're an existing cloud customer, or if this is going to be a lift and shift migration. That can vary quite a bit. Sales cycle on a smaller workload could be as short as like a couple weeks to a month, and then sales cycle for a data center migration could be 2, 3, 4 years even. Advice for cover letter. Most people aren't really going to read cover letters, so I haven't actually done a cover letter at all. Maybe I did it initially, but most recruiters and hiring managers aren't really going to read them. Put more focus and attention on your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile is essentially kind of like a replacement of a cover letter. Could you repeat my thoughts on Oracle? Yeah, Oracle, very solid sales company. They have a little bit of a bad rap with customers just because a lot of people complain about the licensing model for Oracle, but they've got a great product. They're still innovating. They're focusing more on the cloud. They're trying to catch up to the other cloud players, but definitely a great place to hone your sales skills for sure. They have a great sales culture, training, and enablement. You have your first SDR interview next week. Wish me luck. Yeah, good luck, man. What do I sell at AWS? I sell the entire gamut. So typically the way that it works is unless you're a product specialist or sales specialist, you're supporting a list of customers and you get comped on anything that they would buy on AWS. Any thoughts on ICIMS? I'm not familiar with that. How helpful are cloud certifications to get to SDR, BDR role? Not super helpful, but if you do get it, I would get the cloud practitioner one because it's like the highest level certification. It's meant for like business level folks, and that will actually give you some credibility and show you that you have some drive and initiative to learn about the industry before we even get into it. So caps out at 700K. No, it'll get higher. There's reps that'll have $1 million+ years for sure. Do SDRs get paid on deal sizes or deals created? Which is better? Almost always they get comped on like opportunities and deals created, not necessarily on deal size, just because oftentimes you don't know the actual size of the deal at that point, and it also doesn't really make sense to comp SDRs that way because there's just too many factors that are out of their control. But they can control how many deals that they're generating. Also, deal size isn't really relevant because it's the same amount of work for the most part for an SDR to identify that opportunity. Do you prefer managing or individual contributor? I mostly prefer individual contributor just because I've done people management a bit, and I found that, and I was like in a player coach role where I still had my own territory that I was managing, but then I was also overlaid on some other sales engineers. And yeah, I definitely prefer individual contributor, but that's just me personally. Maybe that was just where I was at in my career. How's marketing comp compared to sales comp? So at the big companies, the comp is actually fairly similar across different roles. It's based on your level. So is it better to be a full cycle sales rep than being an SDR, money aside? Yeah, I mean, it's the more senior role. So usually, I don't think there's anyone that would really pick to be like an SDR. Difference between Amazon and AWS. So AWS is Amazon Web Services. That's the cloud division of Amazon. So Amazon has a sales team too, but they're selling, advertising or like the Amazon business, Amazon.com side. So totally different than cloud. Adrian does free resume reviews. Reach out to Adrian if you want a resume review. How hard did AWS press on leadership principles during the interviews? Their interviews are basically all focused on the leadership principles, so you need to know all of them like the back of your hand. You need to have 2 or 3 experiences that you can talk to that show competency in each leadership principle, and you want to make sure not to repeat experiences between interviewers and between leadership principles. Let's see, skipping through some questions. What are some good startups to apply at right now? So there's a ton. So I recommend if you're going to apply for a startup, apply for ones that are like based in the city that you're nearby. Usually you're going to have a better experience if you're at like the main hub for a startup. So if you're in Chicago, for example, there's a great website that I recommend people check out. It's a built-in. So like there's like builtinchicago.com. And it's like a blog for the tech startups, the hot tech startups in the Chicago area. And they have one for like New York City, built in Miami and San Francisco, and built in Austin. So check those out. What position would you recommend Bachelors in Engineering to go for into tech? Bachelors in Engineering, you can go into like a sales engineer role or solutions architect role, or you can even go into sales. I did biomedical engineering. And I'm in a sales role right now. I started off on more on the engineering side, and then I just moved to sales. How many years in SMB to get to mid-market? It could be, usually it's like 1 to 2 years, probably closer to the 2 years to move up between levels in companies. So that'd be going from like SDR to SMB to mid-market to enterprise. Things move real slow in higher ed. Yep, I've heard that too. What do you think about Crunchbase? Crunchbase is a great resource, especially when you're researching the companies that you're prospecting into. Going to bed, you have to get up at 5, so you can't stay. This first live you got to sit in. As an introvert, this socializing sounds tough. Yeah, I mean, it gets easier. And then Robin, thanks for joining. I record the TikTok lives and I post them on my YouTube. I'm gonna actually put a direct list to like the YouTube playlist, so you can catch the rest of the live later. How many accounts do I own? I own just 2 accounts. What AWS partners do you know are killing it? There's a bunch of them. I can't go into details on all of them, but the big, you can go on the AWS partner network on the website on the Amazon site. It'll actually show you what like the top ranked partners are. So that could be a great way. I've actually recommended some people who want to work at like the big tech companies. But they're having trouble breaking in. A good entry point could actually be working for one of the top partners, and then you put in like 1 to 2 years there, and then pivot into the big tech company. How are your leads at AWS? Is it always just coming in? I pretty much get like 0 leads for the most part, mostly because I have like established accounts and C-suite level relationships, so leads don't really come into play. But there are a lot of leads for the other accounts too, just because there's a lot of people that are, that's the great thing with AWS and Amazon or like Google Cloud or Azure, is they have a ton of resources, and you have a ton of people and engineers that are researching the company and researching the products themselves. So a lot of the leads are coming through those means. Like they're downloading white papers, they're going to webinars, they're going to training sessions. So you're going to get a ton of leads from that. So you get stock or 401k match, or is it more one or the other? You get both. They're usually two separate things. Most of the bigger companies will have some sort of 401k match, and then stock will depend on the company. If it's a non-public company, you'll either get options or RSUs, restricted stock units, and then if it's a public company, of course, then they would give you stock in that case. Mechanical engineering degree useful in tech? Not really. I mean, most degrees really aren't that useful in tech sales. I would say the only one that would really be useful would be computer science. That would be more so if you wanted to be more on the technical side of tech sales. But for the most part, you're not really going to use anything from your degree. At least I don't from my engineering degree. You're so excited for your SDR interview next week. Any advice? Well, congrats on getting the interview. So best advice would be make sure you know some, like, a good amount of information about the company that you're interviewing at. Show that you've done the research, that, you know, at a minimum, you should know high-level information about the founders, the company, how long has the company been around for, what is the main customer base that they're selling into, what problem are they solving, what products do they have at a high level, know some information about their competitors, and then, you know, do some research about, like, the people that you're going to be interviewing with. So the recruiter should tell you, or hopefully provide some information about, like, the interviewer names, so that way you can you know, research them, look up their LinkedIn, and then have a good list of questions to ask them at the end of the interview. That'll be a good thing, because it'll show that you're excited and you're not just, like, passively going through the interview process. Great questions. Oracle. Yep. Oracle's, you know, solid company to work at. Great training. They're kind of like a leader, or they were one of the pioneers in terms of enterprise sales. Let's see. Ooh, a bunch just refreshed here. Let me see. Let me go through this real quick. You made 380K last year as an AE at PayPal. It was lit. That's awesome. Yeah, I had a blowout year this year too. I think last year was great for a lot of reps, just because companies held back quota, and then things bounced back super fast. So, pros, cons, gotchas of stock options and a pre-IPO company offer. So, pros would be potentially you can have a ton of upside. Main con would be you pretty much have to wait for the company to go public or get acquired for those options to actually mean anything. Some gotchas would be you need to understand what the like, just knowing a set number of stock options doesn't really tell you anything. If they tell you they're giving you 20,000 shares, you know, you need to know, what is that out of? Do they have 1 million shares outstanding, 10 million, 100 million? So there's a lot of nuance there. I've heard people getting screwed because, you know, they were given what they thought were a lot of options, but they were quickly diluted in, like, future rounds and everything. Another gotcha would be, if you leave the company, you need to exercise your options, or they actually just get sent back to the company. And what that means is you have to pay the strike price for those options. So potentially you could have, have to pay $20,000 or $30,000 just to even have the chance of exercising, or, like, having those options even being worth anything in the future. And usually they tell you you have to exercise those options within a year of leaving, but startups are starting to extend that out to 10 years instead, which is nice, so you're not, like, out a ton of money. You just got a job offer from Dell for inside sales starting after you graduate. Inspired me. Congrats. Dell is a great place to be. I've heard good things about their sales organization, so congrats on that. What do you think about the Vendition sales camp? Vendition is a solid camp. They're more of like a placement agency. They don't charge anything for the boot camp or anything, but I've heard good experiences from there. What do you think is the career trajectory of an AE? So typically you'll stay on the individual contributor path, go from SMB, mid-market, enterprise, strategic accounts, and then from there you can go into management. But anywhere along the lines, you can go into different job ladders within the company. You can go to product, you can go to marketing, you can go into a more technical role, you can go into business development. So lots of different paths there. Do you know what the pre-sales collective program is like? Yeah, I did. Actually, I have a recorded live that's posted on my YouTube where I talked only about the pre-sales academy program, and actually had one of the employees from there. She actually went through the program herself, and now she works for Pre-Sales Academy. She was on that as well, so check that one out if you want to hear more about it. But it's cohort based. Their next cohort, I think, starts in April, and I believe it's 8 weeks, or maybe it's 12 weeks. I gotta refresh my memory, but it's 8 to 12 weeks. You don't pay anything until you get a job. They're aimed specifically at helping you get a pre-sales engineering or solutions architect type role. What are your thoughts in SLED space? So SLED would be state, local, state and local. So you're currently at SDR. Should you stay in that space? It depends. If you enjoy it, definitely could stay in it. It's one of the, companies usually have a separate, SLED team. So And there's no like red flags there. It's a solid place to be. So it just kind of depends on if you're working well with the manager, you enjoy the customer base. I would stay in there. Thoughts on cybersecurity? Cybersecurity, ton of attention. Lately, over the past few years, it went from being a cost center where companies were only investing in cybersecurity after an incident to now it's like kind of top of mind of everyone just because the breaches are bigger. So good place to be. Would you recommend an AE with experience to get a degree to get into larger big tech roles? No, typically if you're already like working, that's going to be more valuable than any college degree would be. So I wouldn't recommend. I don't think the ROI is there. Love to sell. Where do you start if you don't have sales experience? Big 10 MBA, undergrad comp. Yeah. So you're me looking at the sales development representative position. Take a look at my on my profile. There's a playlist. Get into tech sales. I have a bunch of videos posted there in terms of like what positions to look for, how to find them on LinkedIn. So you're gonna basically go for one of those programs. If you have a Big 10 MBA, definitely leverage that alumni network. There will be a good amount of people that have MBAs that are in these big tech companies in the sales space. So try to leverage that, get referrals. Referrals will go a long way to landing position, especially at the bigger companies. Just got a job with Dell after you graduate. Congrats with that. What percentage of commission can you expect from a sale as an AE? So the percentage of commission will vary depending on the company, the product, the quota size. Usually, you're going to have like a $1 to $2 million quota as if you're selling into greenfield accounts or new accounts. So you can kind of like work that number back in terms of what the percentage commission is going to be. So if you're on a 200K OTE pay package, meaning 100K base, 100K commission, and your quota is, let's say, $1 million, then that's about, a 10% commission. So that's going to be like at the higher end, a 10% commission from what I've seen. And then like in my case, for example, I think it's like 0.01% or something, just because my quota is in like close to like $100 million. So it can vary quite a bit. Just got promoted from SDR to AE. How long should you wait before hopping companies? Try to get some closing experience as an AE. So close some deals as an AE first, because they're going to ask you, and if you're interviewing for AE positions at other companies, they're going to be asking you questions about how you did as an AE, deals that you closed, complex deals, challenges that you faced. But you can basically start applying almost immediately if you know you want to switch companies. Better way is update your LinkedIn and then check that little box saying that you're open to recruiters reaching out to you, and then you'll start to get recruiters reaching out for other AE positions. They're doing a ton of hiring within sales right now. Recommended roles for teachers going into tech, pretty much any of them. It's gonna be the same path. You'll typically start off as a sales development representative, but there's a lot of startups within like the ed tech space. So selling, they have the software and technology that's aimed at higher education. So that could be a great space to focus in on, because then you can kind of leverage your background as a teacher, which will be great because you'd be selling to other teachers and school directors and all of that. Where do I want to be in 10 years? So in 10 years, I want to have already launched and sold, my first startup. So that's one of the things I want to do. I think, in my opinion, the highest level of sales is being a founder at a startup, because when you start a company, the founders are the ones that are doing the initial sales, and then even as the company is growing, they're selling the company, they're selling the vision, to their employees, to investors. So that's the level that I want to be at eventually. So I'd say within 10 years, I want to be on my second company. Youngest years of experience you've seen for a level 7, and what's the TC like? So youngest years of experience I've seen for a level 7, I think was 32. Basically, I think my manager, he's only like a year older, so he's 32. But he was at the company for longer, so he got promoted up. So the TC at a level 7, for example, at Amazon, is, I think it's at like 350 to 400K, and it could vary quite a bit. Like if you joined like really early, obviously the stock went up a lot, so you could be a lot higher than that. But for new people joining as a level 7, yeah, it'd be 350 to 400K. Is President's Club and other incentives are regular with tech sales? Yes, it's a regular thing. Real estate, what do you recommend for someone with high income but low cash for down payment? Wait or FHA? Yeah, FHA, you could even do a conventional loan. They'll have programs where you can only put 5% down. So that's what I would that's how I would recommend. You don't necessarily need to put down 20% down payment. I've never did 20% down payment for properties. Like one of them I did 3%, and then I did 5%, and then 10%, and then I think for this other one I was going to do 10% as well. You're not having luck applying at big tech. Should you try middle or startup companies? Yeah, definitely. Better to be somewhere selling software versus not selling software at all. So it usually is a little bit easier to get into startups than the big tech companies. Hey Tom, emailed you for referral requests for intern role at AWS. Yeah, I think I got back to you. Let me know if I didn't. I was going through my emails. I think I got back to most people. I gotta go through my other inbox actually with emails. How well do AWS partners do? Are they making money? Yeah, they're making money too. Making quite a bit. This video is sponsored by Oracle. No, this one's actually sponsored by RepView. This one specifically, not by Oracle. But maybe I should hit them up. What class do you recommend to become a sales software engineer for college? Yeah, so if you want to be a sales engineer, I'm assuming that's what you're saying. So your computer science classes will be important, and then other than that, work on like your public speaking skills. Like join like Toastmasters. Usually, a lot of colleges have like sales clubs, so check those out. Thank you for your content. Just got an offer at Sisense. Awesome. Congrats, man. Have I heard of Varonis? Yes, I've heard of Varonis. Would you do management role versus direct sales? Lastly, I assume partner relationships are better. It depends what you want to do. So obviously in a management role, you're not selling as much. So not everyone wants to go into management right now. I'm happy in an individual contributor role. Growing startup versus FANG. If you're starting out right after college, what's best for growth? So you're consistently going to do better at a FANG versus a growing startup, just because if you get to the higher levels at FANG, you're going to be making a ton of money guaranteed, versus a growing startup. There's a lot of other factors that could get in the way in terms of you getting to the big bucks. And a lot of times, startups have been doing fairly well over the past couple of years, just because of investors going crazy, but eventually things are going to slow down, and at that point you definitely want to be at FANG. And you can always go back to a startup too. I think it's good to get that FANG experience on your resume. Do you need a degree, or can you just do academy? Yeah, you don't need a degree. You definitely could do like pre-sales academy, pre-hired, or you could also just apply for these jobs without doing any of those. You can use some resources that I have to kind of give you some tips to make your profile look as best as you can. What commission could you expect from a 100K sale? So that one can vary depending on your quota. If you have $1 million quota, you could get, let's say, a 10K commission from a 100K sale if you're on a 200K OTE. So it can vary, quite a bit, but 10%, 5 to 10%, that's usually what you'll expect for the commission. Oh, hey Kate, where do I work? I work at Amazon Web Services. Oh, a lot of these questions. Sorry guys, like these comments, like they lag a bit, and then like I'll get like literally like 80 comments in a row. I wish they would update this a bit better. But great questions, everyone. I'm going to be wrapping up right now because it's 10:06 here in Chicago, so I like to get my sleep. Sleep is important. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to message me on Instagram. Of course, follow me on both platforms. I'll be posting a lot more tech sales content. This live session was sponsored by RepView. They're like Glassdoor. but for tech sales compensation data. So they have in-depth reviews for the sales organizations, a lot of like the big tech companies and startups. They have breakdowns in terms of average pay for different roles, for different segments, percentage of reps that are hitting quota. So great resource, highly recommend them when you're researching a company, researching offers. And then other ways to get in would be pre-hired or pre-sales academy. So if you're not having any luck applying for positions using the advice that I've been providing on my channel, you can look at like 2 of these programs. They don't charge anything up front, 8 to 12 weeks. They do coaching, mentoring, prep, and they have relationships with the companies for placement. So after 8 to 12 weeks, you'll be in a tech sales role, making in most cases close to 6 figures, if not over 6 figures, and you only have to pay it back once you actually get a job. And you don't need a degree for that. And then do Sdrs at AWS really make 125K plus? Yeah, they actually do. Although there are some they'll make less, and also depends on your region as well. I think some are more like at like 80, 90K, but from a few of the Sdrs that I talked to, especially the ones that have been there for like a year or two and then maybe got a promotion, yeah, they're at 100K plus. But thanks again, everyone. I'm gonna post the recording of this TikTok live on YouTube. I have a couple other ones, a backlog. I'm gonna post those up. I'll try to post them up today. So you can go ahead and rewatch some of these TikTok lives if there's anything that you missed. But thanks, everyone. Have a great night.